Alright, so if you're wondering if you should be running bid caps or highest volume, so auto bid campaigns on Facebook, I will tell you here exactly what the difference is, what the use case is, what the advantage and disadvantage is, and what is right for your business. Now I've tested this across multiple brands and ad spend, generating multi-6 and multi-7 figures, and I'll explain everything live using this ad account. Now here we have two campaigns. On this account we actually just recently started using bid caps as well. But first of all, before looking at the difference, let's look actually at what's the same. And that is, first of all, regardless of whether you run with bid caps or not, the campaign strategy itself is the same. So here, if we look into the broad CBO campaign, this is the one campaign structure that we always run for all brands, and that works excellently. As you can see here, for some proof, the ROAS and the ad spend, by the way, also works with higher ad spend levels like 100k, 200k, 400k per month. We have done all of that. Now, if you look into the campaign itself, you will find we have a winners ad set here, and then testing ad sets. And in those testing ad sets, we basically have the same ad concept, but 3 different executions of that. So here, for example, this tweeting static ad, the second version of it has somewhat different visuals and somewhat different text, and so on. So we have basically split testing variants of each idea and of each execution. But in general, we have those tests, and then we have the winning ad set. And the way it works is, because it is a CBO, Facebook just decides, okay, what actually resonates the most and where does it make sense to spend most amount of money. And this is how it distributes. So for example, in the winning ad set, we have always all the winners. But then if we create a new strong winning ad, it actually takes over the ad spend and generates usually better performance, which is the case here. So in this one, we have actually one winning variation that's creating all the performance. So we put this specific ad into the winning ad set, where we have just a collection of all winning ads, and keep running those tests. Now, so far, this exact thing is also done on the bid caps campaign. Here again, we have the winning ad set and we have testing ad sets. Right now, we have multiple ad sets here, basically because we just launched this with the successful batches from the auto bid campaign, from the highest volume, lowest cost campaign. We have them in here and nothing more yet. Now, the main difference is, of course, that on the auto bid campaign, we just say to Facebook, hey, like, spend this budget right now, $400 daily, and we just see what happens, right? It will spend those $400 or around that amount, regardless of whether we get profit from it or not. It just spends it. So that means you can have also really bad days, for example, where it spends and then you get, let's say, no sales. Let's actually see if we have something like this. So worst case, you could have some days where you have no sales, or like, let's say, not profitable ROAS of 1.0 or 0.5, whatever is not good for you. And then the campaign would still spend. Whereas on the bid cap campaign, this is a bit different. On the bid cap campaign, we say we want this cost of action. So let's say we are bidding maximum $400 for someone to buy from us. And then Facebook will only spend when it's really sure that it can fulfill this bid. If it will cost more than $400 for someone to buy from this campaign, it will not spend. And this is why you usually can set your bid, and then you can just set a ridiculously high budget. Because if we say, okay, only spend if we get a cost per acquisition for $100 or $50 or whatever your goal is, and if it can fulfill it, then why not spend as much as possible, right? So that's the whole logic behind it. Now, because we have those different setups, we actually treat the campaigns differently. If you run on highest volume like this one, what you want to do is, of course, make sure that your ROAS is actually in check and that you are profitable. So what we do here every single day is we look at the last 7 days, go into the ad sets, and then you just determine, okay, which of the batches is actually spending profitably, which not. So if we see here over the last 7 days, okay, the spend, okay, this amount, this amount, this amount, this one made us actually a ROAS of 19, which is great. The other ones did not spend yet how much we want to spend minimum per batch. So this depends really on your cost per acquisition that you want to have. On this account, we are happy to spend $300 to $400 just to get a purchase, because it's a high ticket item. So it makes sense here. Here, for example, we had a batch that spent almost 400, 380, but we didn't get any purchase from it, so we turned it off. So the logic is really simple. Every day you just look at the last 7 days, and anything that got spent but didn't get you really the results you want, or like got you unprofitable performance, you just want to turn that off. Then if you have a winning ad like this one, you just want to grab the post ID of that ad and transfer it into the winners ad set. By the way, I got asked often, why do you actually transfer that? Why not just run this batch? Because in general, if we run a CBO and Meta decides by itself what to spend on and what will be most profitable, then the less variables it has to choose from, the better, of course, the better the algorithm can work, because less variables means less complexity. And if you have like thousands of ad sets in here, it's not very convenient. And we see that some ad sets don't even get spent at all. And this is not really what we want, right? We want the algorithm at least to spend a bit on it and to test it. So this is why you want to transfer it, and eventually it should start spending on the winner's ad set and stop spending on the batch. Usually it works like that. Right now it still mainly spends on the winning ad set. That is fine. In a while that might change. Now to keep this AutoBid campaign in check, again every last 7 days, again every day you look at last 7 days and turn off what is burning your money. Now what you also want to do is to look at the last 3 days, because this kind of campaign you want to scale, right? It's not like with the bid cap that you're just like, okay, like let's just increase the, it's not just like with the bid cap where you just set a way higher budget than you are currently spending and it's fine because it won't spend it only profitably. But here you want to scale slowly, right? So you want to look at the last 3 days and then you want to have either a cost per purchase target, cost per acquisition target, or ROAS target. And then you're like, okay, if we hit this target, we scale the campaign up. If we don't hit this target, we scale the campaign down. Because if you reduce the ad spend, usually ROAS goes up. If you increase the ad spend, usually ROAS goes down. By the way, if you're not sure why this correlation exists, just check out this video on how to scale Facebook ads profitably. There I explain it perfectly and how to actually scale while still having a good ROAS. Now back here, let's say here for the last 3 days, okay, the ROAS is actually pretty bad. With this brand, we wanna be at least at a ROAS of 6 to scale. So we would go and downscale this by 20%. We do this by simply calculating 400 times 0.8. That would be the budget that we change to. Now today we already updated this, so I won't be doing this, but usually you would do this. And then if the ROAS is, let's say, at a 7, which also is on some days, now this account is fluctuating a lot because again it's high ticket items, and on some days you get like a ROAS of 10, on other days 1. On average it's like, you saw it around a ROAS of 5, which is healthy for the account. Let's say over the last three days the ROAS is actually at our target. Then what we do, 400 times 1.2 equals 480, so we would update the budget to 480. As simple as that. And this is what you want to do every single day, and this is how you can scale up exponentially, because if you get some ads to get the ad spend in this campaign and take it over and keep improving like this one, then you can just quickly increase the budget. So in general, how to treat the AutoBid campaign or the highest volume campaign. Again, the last 7-day rule every single day for knowing what to turn off. The last 3-day rule every single day to know what to scale up or down. Now in comparison, the bid cap campaign, of course, like it scales itself because you can just set a way higher budget that is currently spending. And if you put in ads that can actually get your performance target at any ad spend, basically they will spend it. And the advantage of this is also that, hey, if you have a day where many people buy, let's say a promo day like Black Friday or Valentine's Day and so on, then this bid cap campaign will suddenly spend much higher by itself, right? And it will kind of serve scale itself because it's seeing like, okay, I can get this target, I'll spend more. I can get also this target, I will spend more, and so on and so on. And then on a slow day, let's say on a Monday when everyone is working and almost nobody's buying, it will spend almost nothing. So that is really great and like kind of a benefit of this. So it auto scales itself. And when it comes to shutting off ads, you also not really have to do much. Like if Facebook sees, okay, I can't actually really achieve the target with this batch, it will just not spend much on it. And where it sees it can achieve the target, it will just spend more on it. Now you probably already see, okay, like the bid cap campaign is overall spending way less than the broad campaign. And here we also come to a problem of the bid cap campaign, because in general, like bid cap, right now everything sounds better, right? You don't run into the risk of like something overspending and you losing money. You can be kind of slow with turning off inefficient batches, because yes, having more batches in the campaign might confuse the algorithm, but also it will just not spend if something goes wrong. So you can be kind of slow to turn them off, and it even kind of serve scales for you, so you don't really have to do much. So sounds perfect, right? Now the disadvantages of it. First of all, you can see the ad spend is much lower. As I mentioned before, we want to get purchases here on this account. Let's look at the last 30 days. We want to get purchases here for $400, $500. That's totally fine. So this is fine. Like a ROAS of 6 is the scaling number. But if we are in general over a ROAS of 4, this account is doing well. Now you can see that this auto bid campaign is actually hitting this cost per purchase. Now the bid cap campaign here, we have a cost per purchase of 85, which is insanely good. We could spend more, we could actually like tolerate a higher cost per purchase, and the ROAS is also totally ridiculously nice, but it does not spend more. And that is the issue. So you can see actually we set it up in a way that yes, the bid cap is $420. That means we are willing to spend $420 or to bid $420 on our desired action, which is a conversion. Now, does it actually do that? Well, yeah, it keeps it even below, but it doesn't really spend more. And this is kind of where the power of bid caps ends, because it can't always perfectly predict if it makes sense to spend or if it will not achieve this target. So this is why the bid cap campaign is generally more conservative and sometimes just does not spend, even though it would make sense here to spend more. Like the ROAS is way better than we want, the CPA is way better than we want, but the purchase volume is low, so let's increase it, but it does not increase it. This is just one problem. The second problem is that if we look at the frequencies, you can see over the last 30 days, this spent almost nothing and has a way higher frequency, whereas this spent more than basically 100 times more and has a lower frequency. Now, why is this the case? Well, if we run on bid caps, we are telling Facebook, okay, like I want you to achieve this target, which is now in this campaign $420 per purchase, or very strictly speaking, we are bidding $420 on a conversion, lower is even better. And then Facebook says, okay, how can I ensure this is definitely the case? Who will convert most likely? And the answer is always the people who are at the bottom of the funnel. So it goes and targets those people. Now the problem is that the bottom of the funnel people are already nurtured, and they are nurtured by something. And I can even tell you by what. They are nurtured by this campaign, because this campaign spent regardless of whether someone will buy or not. But if we have this campaign running and the frequency is high and like it will just empty the funnel, it will just convert those bottom of funnel people, at some point there will be no bottom of funnel people left, especially if this campaign would be running by itself without any support. And then what happens is that frequency spikes and it just doesn't manage anymore to achieve the bid cap, and then it just completely stops spending. So that is the problem here. Now there are specific strategies to counteract this problem. For example, here we see that, hey, the cost per purchase is only 85. We can afford more. We are bidding for 120, but for some reason it just does not spend. So actually we can go and change the bid cap and increase the bid cap and saying, okay, look, Facebook, I know you're very conservative, but this is a bit too conservative. Let's actually increase it to like $500. And then it might spend more, and then also the frequency might go down, because now Facebook is like, okay, it can actually be more expensive, so I can also target rather cold people. And this is like the main difficulty with the bid caps campaign. If you run it alone by itself especially, then you want to make sure that Facebook is targeting cold people, because if it is not, then again you will just burn out your funnel, there will be no one to spend on, and then the campaign stops spending. And then even if you run an auto bid campaign, it will just suck, because there's no funnel, there's no retargeting. You retargeted and converted all the people in your funnel, and then you basically need to build your warm audience from zero, and this is usually pretty expensive, and you will see performance suck on all campaigns. So you have to be careful with the bid cap campaign. This is why in general I recommend this only for businesses that are already up and running, and especially for businesses that know exactly how much they can spend, how much they can afford to spend on acquiring a new customer. Because if you set the bid cap too low, and this is actually what we even did here, we will need to increase it now, then the frequency will be just too high, and that means it's just emptying the funnel but not really building your business, and this is not what we want. Now on the other hand, the auto bid campaign, that one might sometimes spend unprofitably, but overall you can really control the spend here, and you will definitely nurture your funnel. And this is extremely important, because especially if you're just starting to run ads for your product, you can't just go and launch a bid cap campaign unless you perfectly know how much it will cost you to acquire a new customer, which is basically never the case without prior testing. And in the beginning, because there isn't even a warm audience, chances are performance will suck even on the auto bid campaign, and the bid cap campaign will just not spend at all. So in the beginning you need to spend unprofitably, maybe for 1 week, maybe for 2, to build a warm audience, to then get them converted slowly while still nurturing new cold people. It's very unlikely that someone sees your ad for the very first time in their life and they click on it, buy immediately. This is not how it works. They need to see the ad over a few days or a few weeks, maybe even, have multiple touch points with your brand, and then eventually decide to buy. So this is why in general the auto bid campaign, the highest volume, lowest cost campaign, serves this purpose much, much better. And even if you have like an unprofitable day or like a day where your ROAS is 0.8, you don't really need to be afraid of that, because you know, okay, today not many people converted, but still people saw my ad. So the warm audience got bigger, so eventually on the next day they will convert. And this is also, by the way, exactly what happens. So for example, if we look here on the second, okay, we have a ROAS of 6.5. Then the next day we have a ROAS of 7.5. Okay, great. And the next day we have a ROAS of 0, but we spent the same amount. But it doesn't mean that we lost money here on the auto bid campaign. It just means it nurtured the funnel. Today, okay, no conversions. But then a few days later, okay, again, conversions. So you always, like especially with the auto bid campaign, you always need to see it in a bigger picture. You need to see it over a bigger time frame. And only then you can tell if it's actually working well or not. Now with the bid cap campaign, it is also possible to run that. It's just really advanced. You need to understand what you have to bid to not just empty your funnel, but also build it so that the frequency doesn't spike up like this. So this is what we're currently testing. Now we will increase the bid cap actually to get the frequency down here on this account. And you also have to kind of already have a large enough audience and in general have a more scaled up account is what I recommend, so that even when it spends little, it doesn't like spend almost nothing. Like for example, on the third, this campaign for $100, okay, this one 20. Like this is useless. And even on this $20, the frequency was higher, which is pretty ridiculous. So you want your audience and your overall spend levels to be high enough to say, okay, like on a high day, we might spend 10K per day in this bid cap campaign. On a low day, we will still spend 5K per day, which is half of the budget. It's a significant drop, but it's still like not completely irrelevant. Or to speak in this account's spend level, let's say when we actually find the right balance for the bid cap, it should maybe spend like around $300 or only $200 on a low day if the consistent like auto bid campaign can currently do 400 and perform well at this level. And on high days, it might spend 1K or 1.5K, something around that range. And this is really the goal. So in general, with both, like you have advantages and disadvantages. If you want to run bid caps, you really need to understand your customer acquisition cost, the bid cap you need to set, and also in general have a more scaled up account. So especially if you're starting, start with AutoBid always. And in general, I always also recommend staying on AutoBid, because even on low days, again, you keep nurturing the funnel. If you have like ad spend spikes and drops with the bid caps, it's really not good. It's not consistent enough. At a bigger level, where even on the ad spend drop days, you still spend a good amount of money and the frequency is not too high, then you can also run on bid caps. And this is why usually bid caps are used by really big companies that are spending multiple hundred thousands per month and that are launching like 500 ads per month or even more, so that they don't waste on like overspending on those ads, but Facebook only spends on the best ads. This is what the strategy is good for, but in general you can achieve the same thing with an AutoBid campaign, and you will also keep scaling on this one if you just feed it with strong ads. So unless you really know very intentionally what you're doing, I recommend always going with the AutoBid campaign. And this is how we scaled all the brands we are working with performances like these, and these. Again, this was just the media buying system, but if you want to learn how to actually make ads that scale and how to actually make sure that the ROAS is high enough so that you can scale with the system, check out this video where I explain it in detail. Or if you want someone to come in and actually create those highly scaling ads for you and run this ad system for you, click the first link in the description, because this is exactly what I do. Keep scaling. Bye.